This episode brought to you by way of our sponsors, Kinetic Performance Dog Food. Kinetic's line of premium dry food and supplements provides clean, sustainable energy for everyday active, sporting, and working dogs. Visit kineticdogfood.com for details. And Highland Hideaway Hunting Preserve in Riverside, Iowa, with over 1,500 acres of meticulously managed and maintained preserve. Book a hunt today at highlandhunting.com. And now, on with our show.
We're in Hendersonville, Tennessee today, and it's October 9th, 2024. And we're going to do an interview for Memories from the Field, and this interview is with Ed Laneville. And Ed, even though he's lived in Tennessee most of his life, grew up in Iowa and is a native Iowa, and we're going to talk about his youth and his experiences with that nasty old bird, the rooster, the male cock rooster that has taken us all many a day, giving us all the make our wring our hands that they're. But that's what's fun about it. So, Ed will start by just talking a little bit about your background. You grew up in Iowa, is that right?
Grew up in Iowa. Stayed there till I went. Left Iowa in the Army when I left in 19...
And that was Iowa Falls, right?
Iowa Falls, Iowa is where I grew up.
And where's that kind of located in the state?
It's north of Ames, about 50 miles, and probably 50 miles to Fort Dodge to the west, and Cedar Falls to the east, and Mason City to the north. Kind of north central Iowa.
And I think even today, that is considered to be pretty good pheasant.
It still
country
is
right
good.
now. So I imagine back then it was really good, probably.
In the 60s, it was the
best. Yeah. Saw a lot of out-of-state guys probably coming into the area on opening day.
You know, the roads were just full of people looking for a place. And back then you could get on property pretty easy too. And that has changed in years since.
So you grew up in town, or you were in town up until the 7th grade, as I understand it.
Yeah, when I started 7th grade, we'd moved to the farm. Dad bought a farm north of town. It was 160 acres, and then stayed there, till I graduated in high school, and the folks stayed there till, I guess they were in their 70s. They moved back to town. You know, he sold the farm property, 5 acres with the house, barn, and all that, and he kept the rest of the property. But anyway, but yes, like saying, it's where I grew up.
So what were the bird numbers like on that farm typically when you moved out there? I mean,
there were plenty of, in our corn and soybeans. But on the west side of the property, there was this railroad track, good cover. And once they picked the corn, if you walked that, there were a lot of birds. Yeah. And the whole area, I mean, the railroad track went north and south, and you could walk that for mile sections, And I would do that as a kid. I'd walk one side, and then didn't have anybody to pick me up, so I'd have to come back the other side. But it was, you're young. I was in 7th grade, hunted with had an Ivor Johnson 410.
Now, what was the history on that gun? Had been a family gun?
It was my dad's mother's, and had the 2.5-inch shell, single shot. So, and I was lucky. I got birds, not every time, but I did get some, and which was kind of surprising when I'd come home with a bird. I think they like to see me go, and just because I wanted to hunt, and I couldn't always get Dad to go. And anyway, it was fun. And
now, did your brother, was he a hunter at all?
No, my one brother who was a little younger than I, he had no interest in it, and my youngest brother did, but he was 12 years younger than me, so we never hunted together.
So you just pretty much most of the time were kind of on your own out there, just
and that's what Dad wanted. Yeah, we couldn't hurt anybody. I was by myself, And he wouldn't let me have a rifle, a .22, because everything was flat. And he said, "Nah, you'll be shooting the neighbors," or hitting something, So and later, and when I got a little older, he let me get a 22, or he bought me one for Christmas. But the only thing I hunted with mainly was that 410 until I got a little bit older. I think I was in 8th or 9th, probably 9th grade, and I had a motor scooter. And he had a 12 gauge Model 11 Remington, and I would take that, and I would, put it on the floorboard of the motor scooter, and it was on my shoulder, and I'd go, there was a farm or an area that was really good hunting, about 3 miles up the road, or maybe a little further than that. But I could get there and get home, and then hunt, and then come home, and you could carry tie the birds up, hang them, and come on home. And it worked out good. And I didn't have a license. You're supposed to have a license, I guess. I don't know if you had to have a license back then. I wasn't 16 years old. I mean, I didn't drive a car, but a motor scooter on a gravel road out in the country.
Nobody cared.
Yeah, in the 60s, no one cared what.
Probably most of the kids that age were driving tractors.
Oh, yeah, we were. I mean, driving tractors or the pickup, I mean, if you could reach the pedals and shift, you could drive,
So was that something like when you came home with birds, was that something that everybody was happy about? Okay, you got birds and we're going to eat, we're going to have birds for supper? Or?
Yeah, Mom would cook them, and we had pheasant quite often, for supper. It's just like chicken, And my mother was pretty good. She grew up on a farm, and she'd clean them too.
So she probably cooked a lot of wild game in her days.
Yeah, she did. And so
now in the 7th grade, what year would that have been then?
Oh gosh, let me see. I graduated in '67, so.
And you're 76 now. Correct?
Yes, I'm 76. That's had to be. Would it be 63? Somewhere in that time. I'm bad with numbers.
Early 60s. So.
Yeah, early 60s. Yeah, really early 60s. So, and like I say, cover, every farm had cover back then, or, fence rows, railroad tracks. And then later, they didn't have CRP then, but there were people that did set land aside, rotating crop. They would, corn, soybean, and then on the farm I grew up on, they'd always set about 15 acres aside and let, I guess you call it rest or whatever,
right.
and let whatever they planted.
With oats or something like that.
Grow. And that was good cover, But then they'd plow that up, But it was there. A lot of times it was there for hunt. You could hunt it, and that helped the wildlife too. The pheasant population, they nest in that, so that kept it alive. And then, later as time went on, there was a period when the pheasant population was down, and now they're farming up to the back door pretty much. The fence rows, but I don't know if they have CRP now. In the 80s, I think that's when CRP came about.
About 82, 83, maybe?
Because that's when the population took a jump again.
Yes.
Because I was living down here and in the Tennessee area, and we'd go home. A friend, Alan Reisinger, was a good friend, and Steve Horning, he lives up there yet. We would always get together and hunt, and the hunting back then was good. Yeah. It was it felt like in the 60s. The bird population was really high. And we would go second week of November, and sometimes even later than that. And the birds were a little smarter then, because they'd get up, You wouldn't think they would get up when it was cold. But they were pretty wily then, And I remember one time Alan and I were up there, and I'm not exaggerating. It was like 15 below and 30 below with the wind chill. And we got out and to hunt, and the farmer would give us permission. We were going down in a slough, and we had ski masks on and everything, but God, it was cold. And I thought, this isn't going to last, But once we got going, it was okay. And we stayed out all day, and we got birds. And the snow was kind of deep, but we were probably the only ones there. And we did go to some farmhouses to ask if we could hunt. And I had my ski mask on. There's ice hanging off of it, and well, probably looked like crooks coming to the door, or either that, or they thought these guys are crazy. But let them
thank
go.
God, I'm relieved. I thought you were here to rob me.
Yeah,
and you just want a pheasant hunt.
Yeah, all we want to do is pheasant hunt, and they probably let us go because they thought these people have to be out of their mind to be out in this kind of weather.
You told me a story earlier when we were chatting about your dad road hunting, or at least taking you down the road. And
yes.
You were new to hunting, and you had your 410, and he just basically said, "Why don't you get out of the car and go over there?"
Yeah,
in that field for a while.
Yeah, I was in 7th grade then, and yes, it was a day. It was misting and a light mist, and everything was wet. And there was a field that it wasn't. It was weeds, and it wasn't grown. Anyway, he let me out, and he said, go across it and come back. And I know he didn't want to get out. He'd get wet, and I did. and I had that 410, single shot. And on the way back, one got up, and I got it. And I got back to the car, and he was kind of surprised. And I was wet from the waist down. I mean, because it was wet. But I know he was surprised. He just letting me walk. Get out and hunt, because he thought he wasn't going to get anything or see anything.
Now, you think that was your first rooster, probably, or what?
Might be pretty close to it.
At least with that.
I might have got one. I would have told you earlier when I walked with the same gun. I was in 7th grade. The railroad tracks, and I'd walk down there, and I got one, and came back, and I forgot to tell you, on the way back, I was walking along the highway because Highway 65 and 20 went by the farm. Then when you got to the east, 65 went north, and 20 went on to Waterloo, and a truck driver came by, and he saw me carrying that pheasant, and he honked his horn and waved, and saw some kid out there.
Way to go!
Yeah, way to go! You got one.
That's great.
But I'll never forget that. But and that day that he let me out to go hunt, I know he was shocked. He didn't think he was going to get anything.
But I bet he was pleased and proud that you did.
Yeah,
more than likely.
Probably wishing he'd got out and walked with me.
Now, did you get a chance to hunt with your dad any? Quite a bit, or not?
We did. I remember even before we moved out to the farm, because he hunted with some men once in a while. He wasn't a big hunter, but he knew I wanted to, and I remember one day I was coming home from school, West Side. I was in grade school, and he had a day off. He'd take Thursday afternoons off. He was an optometrist, and anyway, he picked me up. I was walking home. He said, "Let's go out and hunt." And I didn't carry a gun, but I went with him. And a friend of his, Rich Furman, had farm ground and good places, slough and good place to hunt. And that made my day, And I don't know, he didn't have to do that. He'd rather not been out, it was his day off.
Something about being in the field hunting with your dad or your grandpa, or it's just kind of a special time.
I'll never forget those were special days.
Now, at some point, did you hunt with a dog or somebody else's dog for the first time?
Well,
what was that like?
When we lived out on the farm, we had an Irish setter, but she wasn't trained. But I think she'd have been a good dog because she wasn't afraid of guns. She liked to go, and if you took her out, she'd way out ahead of you, and scare the birds up. But once she got tired, it took a while. Then it was better. But she never was trained, But she would have been. But I had friends that, as later in life I grew up, Steve Horning's boy had a chocolate lab that was good, and it was a good dog. And when I was in college, I had a roommate from Creston, Iowa. Gary Wimmer was his name. And his parents were farm folks down there. And at Christmas, that my friends Steve Horning, Alan Reisinger, Bob Harkin would go too, another friend that he's a big hunter yet today of pheasants. We'd go down and meet up with Gary, and Gary had a Springer Spaniel, and it was a good hunting dog. And in southwest Iowa back then, there were a lot of quail back then down there also, and it was good quail country. And so anyway, we'd always, the 4 years I was in college, we always at Christmas made a point to go down and hunt with Gary. And we'd get a lot of birds, and it was good hunting. And the reason we would go mainly is we'd get to hunt quail, because up where I was from in north central Iowa, you would once in a while get, in the 60s, you'd get into some quail, but not like southwest Iowa.
Where'd you go down there? Around Shenandoah or down that way?
Creston and
yeah.
Mount Ayr
Right.
was the area we hunted.
So what was the quail hunting? What was it about quail hunting that you enjoyed maybe more than even the pheasant hunting?
Well, the explosion. If you get up in a covey,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and then they would spread out, and you could hunt them down. Pheasants would usually go a long way.
You'd have one shot at that pheasant maybe if you were lucky, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And the quail, though, you see where they went down, and then you kind of go out and walk that area and get them back up. And sometimes you could hear them calling. They'd work, I guess they were trying to gather
Covey back up.
Yeah, covey back up.
Yeah.
And they were good to eat too.
They were very good to eat.
Man, it was just, and they were a faster, I don't know, they flew faster, I think. They were harder to hit.
Yeah.
But, and when I was a sophomore in high school, there were Kurt Powell was our history teacher. He was kind of a hunter, and he had some people, I can't remember where, we went to southern Iowa, and I can't remember exactly where, but he took myself and Tim Taylor and another kid, I can't remember if it was Carol Kurtz. Anyway, we went down there quail hunting, and that's all we got, and we got really had a good hunt. And then they went back about 2 or 3 weeks later. I didn't go with them. They didn't get a bird. So the day I went was the best.
You were
day.
the lucky charm.
I was lucky, yeah.
Well, that's the way it can be
Yeah.
in hunting, and even more so now with the wild bird population. Is you just don't know, how. And it's certainly not like it was back in the 80s and earlier than that. But there's still birds if there's cover. If you can find the right places that have a little CRP, you're probably going to find birds.
I think this year's presently is supposed to be good from what I've read. There's a tombstone that a cousin of Steve's he's a farmer near Ackley, Iowa, which isn't far from where I grew up in Iowa Falls, and I've been talking with them, and they're seeing birds, and sounds like, and what I get the hometown paper yet, and they haven't come out with the count yet. They do a roadside count in August. They go out in the morning, see what, the mother, the hens with the chicks, how many they count on the road, and they get there. But it sounds like they had a pretty good spring. It wasn't real wet from what I've heard.
From what I've heard, the numbers are supposed to be pretty decent this year.
It's supposed to be up.
So far, somebody said they saw a late hatch here not too long ago. So maybe they've had a couple of hatches.
Second brood.
Yes. Yeah. So that's always good news when you see that. That means that they've been successful.
But I'm waiting for that article to come out, because I'm going to cut it out and send it to that Bob Harkin. And although he says he's not going to hunt Iowa this year, maybe it'll make him change his mind.
Now, going back in time again, what was opening day? What are your memories of opening day? What was that like around Iowa Falls back in the heyday?
It was a big event. I mean, everybody got excited, because pheasant season's opening. And it used to open back in the 60s. It was always around November 11th. That was when it wasn't the end of October, And like I say, just about anybody that hunted was out there. I mean, the roads were traffic, the gravel roads, there were people there, and you're trying to get to your spot, or you had your permission to get on this guy's land.
So everybody kind of had their honey hole lined up,
yeah.
so to speak?
And then after that, at 8 o'clock it opened, and everybody standing there ready, and away you go. And that's when I think you got a lot of birds in, because the birds hadn't been chased around. And it was, and then as the week went on, or the weeks, the birds got, well, the ones that are left have been educated.
A little more savvy.
Yeah, they were smart.
What was the out of state though? There was quite a
yes,
presence of out of state hunters back in that
back
day,
then.
right?
Yes, and I still think they get them. But yes, there were a lot of out of state people because you look at their car tags, and it's kind of like my uncles had hunting camp in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, deer hunting. And everybody from Chicago was up there, at opening day, and it was a big event. And it's just like that for pheasants in Iowa. And I think it might still be. I mean, you get a lot of people coming in.
Now, did you hunt the home place on opening day mostly? Or
yeah, we would hunt there, but there was another place 2 miles up the road that had real good cover. And sometimes we would just go there first. Because we had the railroad tracks, and we knew most generally that it was on the west end of our property, and then there was another farm right on that side, and there really wasn't an easy way to get to it.
So you kind of had that one in your pocket, so to speak. So you knew nobody was probably going to get on that.
Going to get there.
But so the other place maybe. So you
right, it was on the roads going by it, and so you wanted to really, you knew there were pheasants both places, but the other place had better cover, a lot more of it. So that's where we'd like to try to go first, and we usually did. And we'd get the birds.
Now, what did you do after you were done? Did you go for coffee or into Bragg or into town? Or?
No, we'd stay out all day usually until we got our limit, and then go home. Then you had clean birds. No, we didn't. Dad, when I hunted with my dad, he was ready to go home then, when we got, but when I hunted with my friends, even in high school, on Sundays, we'd be out and we'd go out all day long, and whether we got our limit or not. And 3 birds per person was the limit. And we usually, if you had 3 or 4 guys in the car, you never did that. You might get 6 birds, but we never did.
Now, at some point, I'm assuming that you moved into a different gun other than the 410. You probably got the 12 gauge or something at some point. What do you remember about that?
When I got in 9th grade, I started using that, and that's what I used the whole way till I.
What kind of gun was it?
It was the Remington Model 11, semi-automatic, and it hold. Well, you take the plug out, you can put 5 shells in it, and it was full choke, and the kids always teased me. They said, "There's Laneville with his automatic cannon," because they all had pump guns. I mean, I could empty it, and sometimes I would hit them. I don't care how far out they were, I'd shoot.
Well, with that full choke and that long barrel, you could probably reach out there farther.
I could, yeah. You could.
Now, would you classify yourself as a good shot, excellent shot, moderate shot? What would you say you were?
Moderate, I guess. I mean, I did pretty well. I wouldn't say I was excellent, but I did pretty well. Used to do a lot of trap shooting later in life, and that made me better. After high school, and I did some in college, but mostly after college, I did trap shooting, and then when we'd go home and hunt, it made you a better shot, for that kind of thing.
And did you ever own a hunting dog, or did you just hunt with your friends?
Just hunted with my friends.
Okay.
I mean, they'd
have a lab or whatever.
Yes, Steve's boy had a lab, a chocolate lab, and then the fella from Bob lives in Lakeland, Florida now. He has a German Shorthair. He's on his 2nd one, and she's a good dog. We hunted with her in 2019 was the last time I went pheasant hunting in Iowa, and she's a good dog. I mean, it's really, it makes hunting a lot. Well, you don't lose birds. That's the nice part about all that, and they let you know when there's something there. It still surprises you though when they get up.
Yeah, it's kind of. For me, I get more enjoyment out of watching the dogs do what dogs do. I've always been fascinated by the fact that they can smell, and they can, the dogs that are experienced have learned how to handle birds, and know that they're going to, can tell you when they're running, and can tell you when they're holding tight just by the way they react. And I've always found that really
that was
amazing.
Kind of the way his dog was in 2019. And we were in tall weeds, and she'd get out, but she'd jump up high and look back to see where we are, and work work, and she's well trained, so, but yeah, it's really fun to watch them. And if one runs, after you get it down, it's amazing. I mean, now it doesn't, I might be exaggerating. It seems like they get a quarter mile away and that dog will get them, find them. And it's amazed to surprised that the bird would run that far.
And it's amazing how well their noses are to be able to
track them down.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always amazed by that. Now, when you, when you went into the military, then when you got leave or you'd come home, would you try to hunt if the season was ongoing, or around Christmas or whenever
would always come home around Christmas time. Yeah, I would hunt. I always made a point to come home at least once a year, even when I was in the military. And my friend was in the military. Well, Alan, he went in the Navy in '71, and he stayed for 23 years. But we always, I don't know, up until late 80s, maybe 90s, every year we got together. Oh. He and I, even if those other guys didn't go, we'd go home to Iowa and hunt, because he had family there yet, and I did too, and we had a place to stay.
Sure.
Which made it a lot better, and we did. We enjoyed it, and I say the last time I got together was all four of us that went to high school, and we always hunted on weekends. Was 2019 we got together, and now Alan's got some health issues, and he's not able to get out and walk as much like that, and the other two guys are still in good shape, and I'm in good shape, but I don't know, I haven't gotten home, and I don't have family there anymore except one sister.
Right.
She's, so it's and the thing is, I don't know the people up there. I mean, I know the area, but I don't know land. Getting on land now is kind of hard unless you know somebody. There's a fellow I went to school, though, a big farmer in Iowa Falls, Dean Stalzer. He has land, and I think he would probably let me on,
Sure.
Maybe he would have contacts, but there's always the railroad tracks, you always got that to lean back on. So, but I don't have a place to. I mean, you'd have to put the birds on ice, and it just make it more difficult. I don't know.
Looks like the girls are back.
Yeah, the girls home from school.
Well, we'll.
Not school.
But it was. But we always made a point, and still, I don't know. I'd like to go one more time. Like I say, I'm 76. I'm pretty good health, but
well, we're always up there, so.
I don't want to get in the weeds where you got to bring your knees to your chin.
No. And that's kind of what the preserve is kind of nice, because they've got 1,500 acres, and I've been guiding there for 15 years, and so I think I'm the oldest statesman of all the guys that work in there, so I can kind of like pick and choose the field that that I want and kind of thing. And there's some that are better than others as far as what I call senior friendly.
Right.
And we got some guys in there that are in their early 80s. I've had a couple. They don't move too fast, but they're out there trying, and so we.
You got to say that, you got to admire them if you can do that.
Now, as you know, as good a pointing dog as you may have, that pheasant is only going to hold there for a certain amount of time.
Not long.
And that's why we try to make sure our dogs work pretty close, because. If you get too far out there, I'll never get there in time, to see that bird, because even though that dog's got him pointed, I'm never going to get there in time. So we try to keep our dogs pretty close, and so that works out pretty good. But well, Ed, it's been a pleasure talking to you about your growing up, your days in Iowa, and I think there's some people will find some of your stories to be pretty much fun, which is why we do it. Do you have I know you didn't have a dog of your own, but at least, but the old setter, the Irish setter, did she ever do one that you always thought, man, that is just, I never expected that, but she found a bird that I never thought she would?
She found one time to knock down, but she would make, she'd scare more birds up way out ahead of you that you could never, and it'd make you so mad, you know. But if you could ever get her tired, should have put her on a rope and ran her behind the car for about 2 miles, and then taken her out.
Then
in the
she
field.
would have been perfect.
Then she'd
right?
been better, yeah. But she was never trained. But I think she would have been a good dog because she loved. Anytime she saw a shotgun, she just got excited. She was ready to go, you know. But anyway, But I put her on a rope one time too, and that didn't work well. She'd pull it, and you got the gun in your hand, and you know, about I don't know, maybe a 30-foot rope, and it didn't work either. You know, so
what was that dog's name?
Lady was her name.
Lady.
Lady. She was a female. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, you always got to remember that, even though the quality wasn't quite there, that still was your first hunting dog that you went with. So
that's the only one I ever had. my friends actually they had trained dogs, and when you have a trained dog, it really is nice, you know. But I mean, I grew up hunting. You know, I never had a dog. I didn't take the setter because, you know, that often on the farm when I'd leave the house, you know, and you couldn't go out in the field without her.
No,
I mean, she saw you, she's going, you know. Or we could have locked her in the garage, I guess, but I didn't do that. But I used to, even when I was by myself, I mean, it was, you know, there were so many birds back then, though. You could, in the 60s, you didn't need a dog. You needed them to find them if you knocked one down, but to find birds, it wasn't an issue.
Yeah,
you know, they were plentiful.
It's really changed. It really has.
Yeah, it has. Like I say, the best thing that ever happened back in the 80s was the CRP ground. I mean, it brought the population back.
So you and I have probably lived through the heyday, if they call it. There ever was a pheasant heyday,
so,
we probably lived through it.
60s and 80s, I think so, unless they do something different, you know. Yeah, we saw the best of time.
Well, Ed, thank you very much. I think we'll turn the recorder off now, and then we can still have another cup of coffee and chat for a minute.
All right.